Ray Bradbury was one of the most famous and beloved science fiction writers of all time, but his emphasis wasn't on the science part. Unlike hard science fiction authors like Asimov and Clarke, Bradbury wasn't much concerned with how science would advance and wasn't much of a futurist, but rather was more concerned with how humans react to situations or as allegories to comment on current events. So I wanted to find out more about the man behind the books because I am Daisy Ex Machina, the drag queen detective who investigates all things speculative in science fiction, fantasy, and horror. Ray Bradbury was born in 1920 in Waukegan, Illinois. His family moved back and forth between Illinois and Tucson, Arizona, but eventually settled in Los Angeles when Bradbury was a teenager. By all accounts, he was a prolific writer from an early age, and maybe one of the first fanfic writers, writing a sequel to Edgar Rice Burroughs' Warlord of Mars when he was just 12. Like all speculative writers at that time, he first began selling to the Pulp magazine, selling his first story when he was just 18. But he never went to college, but was self-taught through practically living in libraries. The Martian Chronicles, one of my favorite Bradbury novels, was actually a stitch-up novel compiled of short stories he sold through the years. My absolute favorite is Something Wicked This Way Comes, which is a fantasy about a mysterious carnival. But Fahrenheit 451 was the one that made him a household name. Even so, he didn't publish that many novels. He mostly wrote and was known for shorter fiction, and maybe The Illustrated Man and Icing the Body Electric are probably his most famous anthologies. And of course, living in Los Angeles, he was no stranger to writing television scripts, which culminated in the Ray Bradbury Theater, which ran from 1985 to 1992.
People ask, where do you get your ideas? Well, right here. All this is my Martian landscape. Somewhere in this room is an African veldt. Just beyond, perhaps, is a small Illinois town where I grew up. And I'm surrounded on every side by my magician's toy shop. I'll never starve here. I just look around, find what I need, and begin. I'm Ray Bradbury. And this is... Well then, right now, what shall it be? Out of all this, what do I choose to make a story? I never know where the next one will take me. And the trip? Exactly one half exhilaration, exactly one half terror.
So let's get into 10 facts you may not know about Ray Bradbury.
Number 10.
Ray Bradbury fought with Michael Moore. Yes, the documentarian Michael Moore, who was known for Roger and Me, Bowling for Columbine, and many other films. This was because Moore titled his movie about the Bush administration Fahrenheit 9/11, which was obviously a play on Ray Bradbury's 1953 novel, Fahrenheit 451. You see, Moore never asked for permission to use Bradbury's novel as the title. Now, if Bradbury was Harlan Ellison, you know there would be lawsuits involved, but Bradbury actually didn't want any money because he didn't think he deserved it, but he did try to persuade Michael Moore to change the name of the movie. In fact, Bradbury went on television and said, "Give me my title back." According to Moore, it was too late to change the title, which makes me wonder if he would have, if he could have. I don't know. I just thought this one was interesting.
Number 9.
Ray Bradbury leaned conservative. Speaking of politics, Ray Bradbury was a conservative, which sometimes shocks people, because he started as a liberal Democrat, and during the Eisenhower administration warned Republicans in an open letter, every attempt that you make to identify the Democratic Party as a party of communism, as the left-wing or subversive party, I will attack with all my heart and soul. But after Lyndon Johnson drug out the Vietnam War, which Bradbury was vehemently against, he began voting Republican, though he considered himself an independent. He did vote for Jimmy Carter, but then didn't like Carter's handling of the economy and stuck with Republicans after that. In fact, he supported the Tea Party because he felt the country needed a revolution. Even though I personally lean progressive, it doesn't affect my enjoyment of his books at all. Nada, zero, zilch. I just find this interesting because you hardly see any politics in his writings, which is one of the reasons I think his works are so timeless, though ironically his most political book was probably Fahrenheit 451.
Number 8.
Ray Bradbury was a son of a witch. I said witch. And by witch, I mean a woman who was tried as a witch and sentenced to hang during the Salem witch trials. I just think this is fascinating. Bradbury was a descendant of Mary Perkins Bradbury, who was accused of being part of a pack of witches who attacked Timothy Swan in 1692. One of the star witnesses was a ghost, at least according to one of her accusers, who conveniently was the only one who could see the ghost. She also apparently could turn into animals, including a blue boar. Even a petition signed by 115 people claiming Mary was an upstanding member of the community wasn't enough to save her. But though this sounds like it could have ended in tragedy, she broke out of jail, either through bribery or sympathetic friends, and she moved to Maine with her husband. Fortunately for all of us, she lived to the ripe old age of 85 and had 11 children, one of whom was the ancestor of Ray Bradbury.
Number 7.
Ray Bradbury wanted to be a magician. Maybe witchcraft runs in the blood, but Bradbury loved magic, as in carnival magic. Apparently, in 1932, he went to the Dill Brothers combined shows, what she later said was a seedy two-bit carnival. And there he saw a performer named Mr. Electrico, who touched the 12-year-old Bradbury on the nose with an electrified sword, which made his hair stand on end, shouting, "Live forever." The young Bradbury went back to see Mr. Electrico the next day for advice on a magic trick he was working on, which Mr. Electrico helped him with, and he also talked about reincarnation and introduced Bradbury to other carnival performers, including a tattooed man. Of course, this experience stuck with him as he later wrote my favorite Bradbury book, Something Wicked This Way Comes, as well as being the inspiration for the Illustrated Man. Thank you, Tattooed Man.
Number 6.
Ray Bradbury remembered his birth. That's it. I don't have much more for this. Anyway, yes, Bradbury swore he could remember his entire life, including his own birth. He speculated that this was because he was born a month after his due date. A month. His poor mother. Is it even possible to remember your own birth? You're welcome to go down that Google rabbit hole like I did to try to find out. And if you come up with a definitive answer, feel free to leave it down in the comments.
Number 5.
Ray Bradbury wrote for George Burns. Okay, if you're not of a certain age, you may not have any idea who Burns and Allen were. That was the name of a comedy duo, a husband and wife, who started out in vaudeville. Yes, that vaudeville. They eventually found their way to television in the 50s, but back in the 30s, when Ray Bradbury was 14 years old, Burns and Allen had migrated to radio and were pretty big stars, and in front of the radio hall, Bradbury kind of ambushed George Burns and asked if he could be in the audience. Well, there was no audience, but George Burns let him sit in the front row, and Bradbury came back every week to be the audience for their radio show. He also would bring them scripts, and they actually used one of those scripts. Just one, and Bradbury didn't get paid. Hey, can we get someone from the Writers Union in here?
Number 4.
Ray Bradbury was in Playboy. As a writer. Ray Bradbury was in Playboy as a writer. Well, Bradbury was making a name for himself among, at that time, a very small circle of science fiction readers. It wasn't until he was published in Playboy that he crossed over as a household name to the general public. And Hugh Hefner and Ray Bradbury were kind of taking a chance on each other because this was the very early days of Playboy, and this was like for issue number 2, so there was no guarantee it would be a success. What was published? Excerpts from Fahrenheit 451. In fact, Fahrenheit 451 was spread across 3 issues of Playboy, and it didn't stop there. Bradbury was from then on a lifelong associate of the magazine, publishing stories and giving interviews, even authoring a nonfiction book in 1985 called The Art of Playboy. And of course, Fahrenheit 451 has become a classic cautionary tale about a society where books are not just banned, but burned.
Number 3.
Ray Bradbury had a maxophobia. What is a maxophobia? It is a fear of cars. Apparently, he witnessed a brutal automobile accident when 6 people died horribly when he was 16, and it turned him off cars for life. Not only did Bradbury never get a driver's license, he didn't think anyone should drive cars. He claimed automobiles were the most dangerous weapon in our society. Cars kill more than wars do. He wasn't wrong.
I'm a born coward, and also I know I would be a murderer behind the wheel of a car, which is more than most people seem to know. We men are especially horrible at this. The average male is the most dangerous driver on our roads and kills most of the people in our society every year, and he's generally aged 21, as you can gauge by the insurance rates. And I think I would be a dangerous, murdering fiend on the road. And at least I have enough sense to know this and stay away from the devices. I think I'd kill someone the second day out, run over them, and then back up and run over them again.
He also shared a fear of heights along with Isaac Asimov and wasn't a fan of flying. In an interview, he said it took him 3 days to get up to the top of the Eiffel Tower. I assume that meant it took him 3 days to summon the courage to go up to the top, not 3 days of walking up the stairs, right?
Number 2.
Ray Bradbury was BFFs with Walt Disney. Ray Bradbury was a big Disney buff. He saw Snow White and the 7 Dwarfs 8 times in 2 weeks when it was released. He could only afford to pay twice. The other times, he snuck in. But it was 1964 when Bradbury was Christmas shopping and saw a man coming toward him with his arms full of presents. He said, "That's Walt Disney," and introduced himself saying, "I'm Ray Bradbury and I love your movies." Disney recognized Bradbury's name and said, "I know your books." They arranged to have lunch the next day and became really good friends, almost like soulmates. continuously meeting for long hours of conversation. Bradbury even wanted Disney to run for mayor of Los Angeles, but Disney famously responded, "Why should I be mayor when I'm already king?" Unfortunately, the friendship didn't last long because Walt Disney would die just 2 years after they met, which really gutted Bradbury. Still, he continued his association with the company, even writing the story which the Spaceship Earth ride at Epcot Center was built around.
Number 1.
Ray Bradbury hated modern technology. This one was wild to me because you would think a science fiction author would embrace technology. First, Ray Bradbury hated computers. He said they were nothing more than typewriters, and he already had a typewriter. He called Bill Gates and Windows a bunch of flim-flam. As for the internet, he was also not a big fan, saying it prevented relationships between people and diminished the ability among people to hold conversations with one another. And cell phones? He wanted to get rid of them all. But his biggest complaint was for ebooks. He hated ebooks and resisted having his books available as ebooks for a long time. Of course, when he realized publishers wouldn't sign contracts without allowing for ebooks, he finally had to give in, but boy, did he drag his feet. Keep in mind, in Fahrenheit 451, one of the themes was new media, like television, supplanting books. So maybe it's not so surprising that he saw ebooks as a threat. So those are my 10 little-known facts about Ray Bradbury. Did any surprise you, or are you a super fan that knew them all? Let me know down in the comments, and while you're there, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to my channel. Also, let me know what your favorite Bradbury book is. Like I said before, my favorite is Something Wicked This Way Comes, but The Martian Chronicles come in a close second. As always, until we meet again, may all the books you read be